The courtroom was completely full that day, yet nobody sitting inside could have imagined the scene that was about to take place. A young attorney, only a few years removed from law school, entered Judge Judy's courtroom carrying a level of confidence that came dangerously close to arrogance. His perfectly tailored suit, neatly arranged hair, and polished smile made one thing clear to everyone watching. He wasn't simply there to present a legal argument. He had come to create a reputation for himself. In his own mind, he was prepared. He believed he had studied enough cases, rehearsed enough arguments, and memorized enough legal precedents to trap the most famous judge in America inside her own courtroom. But what he failed to understand was simple. Judge Judy had already seen every trick, every manipulation, every inflated ego, and every shade of overconfidence that ever dared to stand before her bench. What the young lawyer expected to become his greatest moment of victory would soon become the moment that followed his name for all the wrong reasons. Everything began with one direct challenge. The lawyer believed Judge Judy had become outdated. In his eyes, her decades of courtroom experience and television fame were no longer enough. He thought she depended more on personality, sharp remarks, and public image than on a real understanding of modern law. His plan was bold and dangerous: challenge her directly in her own courtroom and leave her unable to respond. But he underestimated something far more powerful than textbooks, degrees, or clever legal comebacks. He underestimated wisdom, not ordinary wisdom, but wisdom sharpened by decades of real cases, real people, real lies, and real consequences. And it was carried by a woman who had built her entire reputation on destroying arrogance piece by piece. Judge Judy recognized his type the moment he began speaking, the smirk on his face. The tone in his voice, the carefully chosen wording of his question. It wasn't the attitude of a person searching for justice. It was the behavior of someone's searching for attention. And Judge Judy had never tolerated people who treated her courtroom like a stage for their own ego. Still, even she could not have predicted how far he would push the challenge, or how quickly the situation would turn against him. The attack came disguised as one carefully loaded question. It was designed to make Judge Judy look old-fashioned, unprepared, and disconnected from modern legal interpretation. Every word had been arranged to force her into a difficult position. If she paused in confusion, even for a second, the young attorney planned to claim victory. In his imagination, millions of viewers would later see him as the fearless young lawyer who outsmarted the toughest judge on television. His career would explode overnight. His name would appear in viral headlines. People would talk about him as the attorney who finally made Judge Judy look weak. But instead of stumbling, Judge Judy did something that instantly changed the entire energy of the room. She paused. She allowed the silence to stretch. Her eyes stayed locked on him with the kind of focus that only comes from a lifetime of recognizing deception before it fully reveals itself. For the first time since entering that courtroom, the young lawyer felt his confidence shake. Then Judge Judy responded with devastating precision. Her words were calm, sharp, and powerful enough to make the entire courtroom feel as if the air had disappeared. The lawyer opened his mouth, ready to answer, but nothing came out. 5 seconds passed, then 10. His eyes moved across the courtroom, searching desperately for a way out. 15 seconds. 20. By the time the silence had stretched close to half a minute, the young attorney's confident image had completely cracked. His hands began to tremble. His face turned red. When he finally tried to speak, his voice broke. But it was already too late. The damage had been done. By the 47th second, he was no longer the proud challenger who believed he could defeat a courtroom legend. He was a young man struggling to hold back tears after being exposed for his arrogance on national television. So what exactly did Judge Judy say that left him silent? What truth turned a rising young attorney into a humiliated warning story? And why did one short exchange spread far beyond a single episode, shaking viewers, the legal community, and even the lawyer's future career? The answer was not only in the words Judge Judy spoke, it was hidden in the truth behind them. Because Judge Judy didn't merely answer his question. She revealed something much deeper, something the young lawyer never expected. She exposed not only the weakness in his legal argument, but the weakness in his character. And once that truth was placed in front of everyone, no amount of legal education, rehearsed language, or clever phrasing could protect him. This was not just a courtroom exchange. It was a battle between arrogance and experience, between pride and truth. And as the cameras kept rolling, the entire world watched arrogance fall apart in less than 1 minute. What you are about to discover is not only how Judge Judy won that exchange, but why it mattered so much. Why millions of people online felt something deeper than entertainment when they watched the clip. Why legal professionals debated the moment for months. And why the lesson inside that 47-second silence still matters today. Because at its core, this story is not only about one lawyer and one judge. It is about the danger of arrogance, the value of wisdom, and the power of truth to bring even the most confident challenger down to his knees. If you believed you had already seen Judge Judy at her toughest, this confrontation proved otherwise. Because the story didn't simply reveal one of her sharpest courtroom moments, it revealed what truly happens when pride crashes directly into principle. Before diving deeper into the confrontation itself, viewers were encouraged to subscribe because what unfolded next was far more than ordinary courtroom entertainment. It became one of those unforgettable moments people replayed over and over again, unable to stop thinking about the lesson hidden inside it. The silence that filled the courtroom during those famous seconds wasn't only about a lawyer losing his words. It was about what was truly at stake. Because this was not an ordinary courtroom dispute. And for the young attorney, this wasn't an ordinary opportunity. For him, this moment represented everything. The cameras were rolling, the audience was watching closely. And millions of viewers would eventually see the clip online. He wasn't simply arguing a legal case. He was gambling with his entire future. If he managed to trap Judge Judy publicly, he believed he would become instantly famous, the attorney who accomplished what nobody else could. The man who made America's toughest television judge stumble on camera. In his imagination, interviews would follow immediately, invitations to speaking events, high-profile legal opportunities, national headlines praising the fearless young lawyer who dared to challenge a legend. To him, this felt like a shortcut to greatness, but what he never considered was the other possibility: failure. Because Judge Judy's courtroom is not merely a place where rulings happen. It is a stage where truth eventually exposes everyone standing on it. And if he failed there, publicly, emotionally, and visibly, the consequences would follow him forever. Losing before Judge Judy didn't simply mean losing an argument. It meant losing credibility itself. To break down under pressure in front of the most respected television judge in America meant becoming permanently remembered as the arrogant attorney who believed he was smarter than Judy and ended up humiliated instead. Judge Judy understood these stakes better than anyone. Over decades, she had watched countless attorneys enter her courtroom believing sharp language, clever arguments, and confidence alone would give them the upper hand. But she also knew every confrontation inside her courtroom extended far beyond the walls of the studio itself. What happened there echoed into careers, reputations, and public trust in the legal system. That is what made this moment different. This wasn't merely one lawyer against one judge. It became arrogance against humility, performance against substance. And perhaps most importantly, it became a test of what people truly believe justice should look like. Because if a lawyer trained in prestigious schools and modern legal theory could not stand against the wisdom of someone who had lived the law for decades, then the conversation was no longer about winning a debate. It became about understanding the true meaning of law itself. And inside that courtroom, one reality would soon become impossible to ignore. Judge Judy was not simply defending herself. She was defending the heart of justice from the pride of a man convinced he could redefine it. Long before the cameras captured his silence, the young attorney had already built his confidence around appearances. Fresh out of law school, he carried impressive academic credentials, glowing recommendations, and endless praise from professors who admired his quick mind and sharp memory. Classmates respected him because he could recite legal statutes and precedents almost word for word. Over time, he began believing that knowledge alone made him untouchable. To him, Judge Judy was simply a television figure, entertaining, sharp-tongued, confident, but surely outdated, surely no match for someone trained in the newest legal theories and technical interpretations. So he studied her carefully, not to learn from her. To prepare an ambush, he believed he discovered a weakness, a particular legal precedent he thought Judge Judy had previously misunderstood or overlooked. And with one carefully rehearsed question, he planned to expose her publicly. His greatest mistake was not doing research. His greatest mistake was believing knowledge without wisdom was enough. Judge Judy, meanwhile, had lived through decades of legal battles long before television cameras ever entered her courtroom. She witnessed attorneys collapse under pressure. She watched dishonest people expose themselves. She dismantled arrogance in real courtrooms years before fame ever reached her. To Judge Judy, the law was never just a collection of rules and memorized language. It was something living, something shaped by reason, instinct, experience, and justice. When producers invited the young attorney onto the show, they expected drama and entertainment. What they didn't realize was that they had placed arrogance directly in front of a fire that had been burning for decades. And whenever arrogance walks into fire, the ending is almost always the same. Pride turns into ashes. The moment the young lawyer stepped before Judge Judy, the atmosphere inside the courtroom shifted immediately. He carried himself like someone who already believed he had won. His shoulders stood firm. His chin remained lifted confidently, and his voice carried the tone of a man performing for an audience rather than searching for truth. For him, the courtroom had become a stage. And his opening line was designed for spectacle. "Your Honor," he began confidently, "with all due respect, I believe the interpretation of this statute has been misapplied in several of your previous rulings." The audience immediately reacted. This was not the nervous voice people usually heard from litigants standing before Judge Judy. This was something different. A young man, barely out of law school, openly questioning the legal understanding of one of America's most famous judges. Judge Judy tilted her head slightly, studying him carefully, but she did not interrupt. Not yet. Instead, she allowed him to continue, her silence making every word he spoke feel heavier inside the room. And with every sentence, the young lawyer grew bolder. "Law is not about theatrics, Your Honor," the young attorney continued confidently. "It's about precision. And when outdated interpretations continue being repeated, we risk misleading not only ourselves, but also the public that depends on us for guidance." The words hung heavily across the courtroom. That was exactly the moment he wanted, a direct challenge, a public confrontation, a chance to present himself as the fearless young legal mind willing to stand against a giant. But Judge Judy's silence was never hesitation. It was strategy. She had faced people like him throughout her entire career. And the challengers who entered her courtroom carrying arrogance almost never realized they were slowly building traps for themselves. Finally, Judge Judy leaned forward slightly. Her voice remained calm, but it carried the authority of someone who had spent decades inside real courtrooms. "Young man," she said evenly, "you sound very confident in yourself. Tell me something. What precedent are you referring to exactly? Quote it for me, word for word." The lawyer's smirk widened instantly. He had prepared for this moment carefully. Without hesitation, he began reciting the legal passage from memory. Every sentence came out clean, polished, and rehearsed. His tone carried pride, as though his ability to repeat the text perfectly already proved he had won the argument. As he finished speaking, He glanced briefly around the courtroom, almost expecting admiration from the audience. But Judge Judy didn't react. She didn't appear impressed. She simply waited. Then she asked the question that changed everything. "And do you understand?" she asked slowly. "The context behind that ruling. The circumstances under which it was applied. The limitations the court itself placed on its interpretation." For the very first time, the lawyer blinked nervously. His confidence shifted. "Well," he answered cautiously, "the precedent speaks for itself, Your Honor." Judge Judy's expression hardened immediately. "No," she replied sharply, "it does not." The courtroom became completely silent. "Law never speaks for itself," she continued. "Law must always be understood within context. Otherwise, young man, you are not practicing law. You are simply repeating words you don't truly understand." A ripple of murmurs spread through the audience. The lawyer's jaw tightened. But instead of backing away, he pushed forward again, refusing to surrender the spotlight he wanted so badly. "But surely, Your Honor, the plain language of the text." "Stop." Judge Judy's voice cut through the room instantly like a blade. Plain language without comprehension is nothing more than noise. Every eye inside the courtroom locked onto her. "The law is not a game of memorization," she continued firmly. "It is the application of reason, principle, and judgment." The young lawyer's expression began changing now. The confidence he entered with slowly started fading under the pressure of her words. "Do you know why I made the ruling you are so eager to criticize?" Judge Judy asked. The attorney opened his mouth slightly, searching desperately for an answer, but nothing came. His face flushed red, his rehearsed confidence was slipping away. Judge Judy never waited for him to respond. "I'll tell you why," she continued. "Because the circumstances required it. Because justice demanded it." Her eyes stayed fixed directly on him. "And because, unlike you, I do not stand here trying to prove how clever I am." The courtroom felt frozen. "I stand here," she continued calmly, "to make sure the truth prevails." Then came the line that shattered him completely. "That is the difference between you and me, counselor. You seek victory. I seek justice." The silence afterward felt unbearable. The young lawyer's carefully rehearsed confidence collapsed under the weight of her words. He tried opening his mouth again. Nothing. No response came. The audience leaned forward, waiting. 5 seconds passed, then 10. His composure began breaking apart visibly. His eyes moved downward. His hands trembled slightly, as though even his body had started betraying him. He wanted to answer, but Judge Judy had exposed the real weakness behind his challenge. He memorized legal language. But he never understood the heart behind the law itself. Then Judge Judy delivered the line that completely destroyed what remained of his confidence. "You may know the book," she said slowly, her voice cold and sharp like steel, "but I am the book." The courtroom exploded instantly. Gasps, whispers, even quiet laughter from audience members who immediately understood the brutal truth behind her statement. The young lawyer's face lost all color, his smirk vanished completely, and the pride he walked into court carrying dissolved publicly before millions of future viewers. He stood motionless in the center of the storm he created, unable to escape it. By the 15th second of silence, the tension inside the room felt overwhelming. By the 30th second, tears had started forming in the lawyer's eyes, and by the 47th second, his voice cracked as he finally tried to speak again. But it was too late. The tears reached him before the words ever could. What began as the moment he hoped would launch his career had transformed into the most humiliating experience of his life. And Judge Judy accomplished it without shouting, without losing composure, and without ever needing to overpower him emotionally. She simply exposed the truth. But the confrontation was far from over, because what Judge Judy revealed inside that courtroom was not merely the lawyer's ignorance. It was something deeper, a truth showing that knowledge without wisdom eventually collapses under the weight of real experience. And the lesson hidden inside those 47 seconds would spread far beyond that courtroom itself. For a brief moment afterward, it felt as though the entire room had forgotten how to breathe. The young lawyer's lips trembled again, but still no words formed. His eyes moved nervously from Judge Judy to the audience, then toward the cameras, and back again, desperately searching for someone, anyone, who could rescue him from the disaster unfolding in front of millions. But there was no escape, no memorized precedent, no clever response. No way out of the corner he had trapped himself inside. 5 seconds passed, then 10. But the silence filling the courtroom was no longer ordinary discomfort. It had become crushing. The audience shifted uneasily in their seats as they watched the young lawyer slowly unravel under the pressure. Some people covered their mouths in shock. Others exchanged nervous glances. Yet nobody dared interrupt the moment. Judge Judy remained completely still. She did not rush him. She did not soften her expression. She simply sat there calmly, allowing the silence itself to become the loudest thing in the room. And in that courtroom, silence had become her weapon. By the 15th second, every trace of the lawyer's earlier confidence had disappeared. His hands shook visibly while gripping the lectern. His shoulders slumped as if the pressure of the moment itself was physically crushing him. He tried opening his mouth again. Only a weak breath escaped. By the 30th second, tears had already begun forming in his eyes. His breathing became shallow and uneven. The confidence that carried him proudly into the courtroom had been replaced by something completely different. The realization that he had not been defeated through shouting, intimidation, or endless legal arguments. He had been defeated by truth, and worse than that, by a truth he could not deny. The audience felt it too. The once arrogant attorney who entered the courtroom with a smirk had now become a symbol of pride collapsing publicly. Every passing second no longer felt like silence. It felt like a countdown to humiliation. Then came the 47th second. The lawyer's voice cracked as he finally attempted to speak again. Tears reflected beneath the bright courtroom lights as he struggled desperately to regain control of himself. But all he managed to say was, I can't." The broken words echoed through the courtroom like a confession. A confession that he could no longer defend his argument, could no longer hide behind memorized legal language, could no longer stand against the weight of Judge Judy's wisdom and experience. In that moment, he lost far more than a legal debate. He lost his credibility, his composure, and the identity he created for himself as the brilliant young lawyer destined to conquer a courtroom legend. Gasps spread through the audience immediately. The silence that destroyed him had finally ended. But the damage was permanent. Cameras zoomed toward his flushed face. Capturing every visible sign of humiliation no amount of legal education could hide, Judge Judy leaned forward slightly. Her voice remained calm, controlled, and unshakably firm. "The law is not a toy, young man," she said. "It is not a script you memorize and perform for attention. It is a living truth, and if you fail to respect it, it will break you in front of the world." The lawyer lowered his eyes. "That," Judge Judy continued, "is what you just learned the hardest possible way." Her words landed like a final gavel strike, Ganbelsult, final, unavoidable. The courtroom erupted afterward. Some audience members applauded in shock. Others remained silent, still processing what they had witnessed. But everyone in that room understood one thing clearly. They had just watched arrogance collapse in less than 1 minute. And as the young lawyer stood there silently with tears running down his face, Judge Judy had done far more than win an argument. She delivered a lesson people would never forget. Viewers were encouraged to subscribe because the aftermath of those 47 seconds reached far beyond the courtroom itself. The silence lasted less than 1 minute, but its impact spread everywhere. What happened inside Judge Judy's courtroom quickly became larger than a single television case. It became a cultural moment. Within hours of the episode airing, clips of the confrontation exploded across the internet. At first, the footage circulated through legal discussion groups and Judge Judy fan pages, but soon it spread across every major social media platform. Millions of viewers replayed the moment repeatedly, shocked by the raw humiliation of watching a confident young attorney completely fall apart under the weight of truth. Very quickly, Judge Judy, 47 seconds, became a worldwide trending topic. Memes flooded the internet. Commentators analyzed every second of the confrontation. Ordinary people shared the clip over and over again because it felt like something deeper than simple entertainment. It became a modern parable about arrogance destroyed publicly. Every second of silence, every nervous expression, every visible crack in the lawyer's confidence, all of it became symbolic of pride finally meeting consequences. Law students began debating the confrontation inside classrooms across the country. Some defended the lawyer, arguing that he had been humiliated too harshly. Others insisted he received the most valuable lesson possible. The law is not about showing off intelligence. It is about serving justice. Professors even started using the clip during lectures as a warning to students entering the legal profession. Do not mistake knowledge for wisdom. And never underestimate the power of experience. Meanwhile, Judge Judy's reputation grew even stronger. For decades, she had already been respected as the fearless judge who tolerated no nonsense. But this confrontation elevated her legacy to another level entirely. She became more than a television personality. She became the woman who dismantled arrogance using nothing but patience, silence, and truth. The young lawyer, however, experienced the opposite fate. Instead of becoming famous for courage, he became infamous for collapse. Headlines mocked him. People no longer viewed him as a promising young attorney. They remembered him as the lawyer who cried after 47 seconds, and that label followed him everywhere. Clients hesitated. Colleagues whispered behind his back. The future he imagined for himself suddenly looked shattered. But the impact of the confrontation reached even deeper than personal humiliation, because it forced people everywhere to ask difficult questions about the law itself. What does it truly mean to understand justice? Is legal understanding simply the ability to memorize precedents and repeat statutes perfectly? Or is it the wisdom to apply law with context, humanity, judgment, and experience? For most people who watched that courtroom exchange, the answer became obvious. Wisdom was stronger than arrogance, and experience was stronger than performance. In homes, classrooms, churches, and workplaces, people began reflecting on the deeper lesson hidden inside those 47 seconds. How many times had pride pushed people into battles they were never truly prepared for? How often had arrogance blinded someone from recognizing truth standing directly in front of them? Judge Judy's confrontation with the young lawyers slowly became more than just a viral courtroom clip. It became a mirror reflecting society itself. For some viewers, it remained entertaining television. For others, it transformed into a warning story about ego, pride, and the danger of mistaking intelligence for wisdom. But for everyone who witnessed it, one reality became impossible to deny. In less than a minute, Judge Judy turned a simple courtroom exchange into a timeless lesson people would remember for years. And in the end, those famous 47 seconds became far more important than one argument between a judge and an attorney. They became a reminder of what truly matters when knowledge collides with wisdom. The young lawyer entered the courtroom carrying every advantage imaginable: youth confidence, sharp memory, prestigious education. But none of those things could survive the weight of truth delivered by someone who had spent decades living the law rather than merely studying it. Judge Judy did not simply win a debate. She revealed a principle extending far beyond the courtroom itself. Arrogance eventually collapses when confronted by experience, humility, and truth. For the lawyer, the lesson became painful and public. For the audience, it became unforgettable. And for Judge Judy, it was simply another day doing what she had always done best, cutting through pride until reality stood exposed. But perhaps the most important question raised by the confrontation was never truly about Judge Judy or the lawyer. It was about everyone watching. Which path do people choose when challenged? The path of arrogance or the path of wisdom? Because the answer to that question shapes far more than legal arguments. It shapes lives. Viewers who believe Judge Judy acted correctly by exposing arrogance were encouraged to subscribe, share the video, and discuss the confrontation in the comments. Some argued she had been too harsh. Others believed the young lawyer needed exactly that lesson. But regardless of opinion, nobody denied the emotional impact of what happened. The confrontation stayed in public conversation for months because people recognized something universal hidden inside it. Everyone, at some point in life, faces moments where confidence collides with reality. And when that collision happens, memorized words and rehearsed performances often disappear quickly. What remains is character, humility, and wisdom. The young lawyer's greatest mistake was never his legal argument itself. It was his belief that intelligence alone made him superior. He entered the courtroom hoping to expose Judge Judy publicly. Instead, he exposed himself. He believed memorizing legal text gave him authority. Judge Judy showed him that true authority comes from understanding, from experience, from knowing not only what the law says, but why it exists. That difference changed everything. The confrontation also reminded millions of viewers why Judge Judy remained respected after so many years. Not because she was loud, not because she was famous, but because she understood people. She recognized arrogance immediately. She recognized insecurity hiding behind confidence. And she understood that many people use intelligence not to seek truth, but to seek superiority. That is why her response struck so deeply. She did not humiliate the lawyer with cruelty. She humbled him with truth. And truth became impossible for him to escape. Even after the cameras stopped recording, the impact of those 47 seconds continued spreading. Legal forums debated whether the lawyer deserved sympathy. Psychologists discussed public humiliation and ego. Professors analyzed the confrontation as an example of confidence collapsing under pressure. And ordinary viewers replayed the clip repeatedly because something about it felt painfully human. People recognized themselves in it, their pride, their mistakes, their moments of overconfidence. That is what transformed the confrontation into something timeless. Because underneath the courtroom drama existed a lesson every person understands eventually. Knowledge without wisdom is fragile. Pride without humility is dangerous. And arrogance always becomes weakest when finally forced to face truth. Judge Judy understood that lesson long before television ever made her famous. The young lawyer learned it in 47 devastating seconds. And millions of people watching learned it alongside him. In the end, the silence itself became more powerful than any argument spoken that day, because sometimes silence reveals what words try desperately to hide: fear, weakness, truth. And when the young lawyer finally whispered, "I can't," those words became more than surrender. They became the moment pride finally collapsed under the weight of reality. Judge Judy never needed to shout, never needed theatrics, never needed cruelty. She simply allowed truth to do what truth always does eventually: expose everything. And that is why those 47 seconds still echo today. Not because a lawyer cried, but because millions witnessed the exact moment arrogance met wisdom and lost.